Good morning, everyone. Are we awake? Hope you recovered from last night because the gala was pretty exciting, right? But over these past few days, we have celebrated something remarkable. The pioneering work of Asian American scholars, scientists, and researchers, discoveries in medicine, breakthroughs in physics and computer, especially AI, exacting labor that pushes American science forward. We should be proud, and we should say so loudly and often. But if we leave this symposium having only celebrated, we will have done half the job, because this same nation that benefits from this brilliance has again and again treated the people behind it as suspects first and citizens second. And unless we understand that history, unless we carry it into the policy rooms we're building toward, we will keep repeating it. So let me tell you a brief story in 3 parts. Part 1 starts in 1942, Executive Order 9066 sent 125,000 people of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 American citizens, into American concentration camps across this country, including doctors, farmers, teachers, engineers. No individual evidence of wrongdoing, no charges, no access to an attorney, no trials. Just ancestry treated as evidence of disloyalty. Dressed up in the language of military necessity, now we call it national security. My father was Fred Korematsu, who challenged these military orders. His case of Korematsu versus the United States went all the way to the Supreme Court, but in 1944 he lost in the 6-3 decision. In 1983, the smoking gun evidence was found in Washington, D.C. that proved there was no military necessity for Japanese Americans to be imprisoned during World War II. At the time of my father's Supreme Court case, the Department of Justice had withheld evidence, altered evidence, and destroyed evidence. And as we know it today, the burn order. After almost 40 years, this evidence was uncovered, and my father's Supreme Court case was reopened in November of that year under a little unknown legal procedure called writ of error cum nobis, meaning an error before the court. My father's federal conviction was overturned. It set the precedent for the signing of the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 by President Reagan. That was the U.S. government official apology to all incarcerated people of Japanese ancestry during World War II. Part 2 starts in 1999 with a name many of you know, Wen-Ho Lee, a Taiwanese-American scientist at Los Alamos, accused of spying for China, held in solitary confinement for 9 months, denied bail, his career and reputation destroyed in headlines before a single charge was ever proven. The espionage case collapsed. He pled to a single minor count unrelated to spying. A federal judge apologized to him from the bench, a rare and telling moment of how the government had treated him. The pattern from 1942 hadn't disappeared. It just changed its paperwork. My father knew the feeling of being accused of being a spy just because you look like the enemy, and that's why he spoke up against this accusation in defense of Dr. Lee. Part 3, as we have been hearing through the symposium, from 2018 to 2022, the Department of Justice ran the China Initiative, ostensibly to combat economic espionage. In practice, a dragnet that swept up Chinese and Chinese American academics for the kind of minor grant disclosure paperwork errors that for anyone else would never see a courtroom. Of roughly 150 people charged, the overwhelmingly majority were never convicted of anything resembling espionage. Careers were destroyed. Collaborations between American and Chinese scientists have measurably declined since. Researchers today report delayed grants, quiet professional isolation, colleagues who now hesitate to even apply for federal funding, not because of anything they did, but because of who they are. The initiative was formally shut down in 2022, and Asian American Scholars Forum was instrumental in that effort. But right now, in 2026, there are members of Congress actively pushing to bring it back, and prosecutors who by most accounts still feel emboldened to bring these cases. The infrastructure never really left. It's idling, waiting for the next political moment to rev it back up. 3 parts, 1 through line, national security, weaponized as a pretext for treating an entire community as inherently suspect. Here is why this matters for the work in front of us. Asian Americans in this country have always occupied a strange, contradictory position, considered as the model minority when it's convenient, and recast as the perpetual foreign threat to the moment geopolitics demands a villain. It is scapegoating. Both roles erase the same thing: the individual person, their record, their actual conduct. You cannot build sound national security policy on a category that includes both a Nobel laureate and a suspect in the same breath, distinguished only by ancestry. So what do we do with this history? First, we insist that any policy addressing genuine security concerns, and some concerns are genuine, be built on individualized evidence, not ancestry, national origin, or professional ties treated as a proxy for guilt. That distinction has to be written into the policy language itself, not left to good intentions, based on moral principles. Second, we educate the public. Most Americans never even heard of Wen Ho Lee. As stated in the National 2025 survey by the Asian American Foundation, TAF, some know Executive Order 9066 only vaguely, as a historical footnote rather than a warning. That gap is not accidental, and it is not harmless. It's exactly the gap that lets the same pattern recur under a new name every generation. Part of our work is narrative work, telling these stories clearly, connecting 1942 to 1999 to today, so the public recognizes the pattern before the next case, not after. Third, advocacy is not optional and is not separate from science. When you see a colleague's case built on suspicion rather than evidence, say so. When you see legislation that treats an entire diaspora as a security risk, name it. When misinformation blurs into a deliberate disinformation, when vigilance becomes a euphemism for racial profiling, we are the people best positioned to call it what it is, because we know both the science and the cost. We have spent this symposium honoring extraordinary achievement. Let's leave it committed to something else too, making sure the next generation of Asian American scientists gets to do their work without wondering if their next grant application will be read as research or as evidence against them. My father said, "Stand up for what is right and don't be afraid to speak up." This is about all of us. Thank you.